Now, to do the video for the wristband, you need to make sure you have your beads on the project or on the yarn before you do the project. I'm using a pink to show you, but my daughter has chosen blue for her project. But just to show you, I have one of these plastic needles that came with one of my looming kits, just a simple plastic one. And typically these beads, which are just pony beads, have a big enough circle that you pretty much don't need the needle if you don't want to. I mean, you can just simply thread them in, but if you want to, you can thread the needle, and that's what I did. So you would thread the needle, and because I'm doing a specific pattern, as you can see with the video before, by using the needle, it allows me to pretty much figure out my pattern. Like I can put on my two blacks, and then I can look for, my two darker blues. I know are a little hard to see, and I just lost one. But with using the needle, I can kind of see, you can kind of plan out your pattern, and then all you have to do is simply drop them down. And then on the yarn, keep in mind that the first beads you place on your yarn will be the last beads you take off. So if you're doing a specific pattern, keep that in mind as well, so that you know how to work your beads. But again, the easiest way to determine is figure out how many times you want to use beads in a row, and then roughly estimate how many rows you feel you'll be doing for your project, and put that many beads on there. I don't necessarily recommend beads for any project that's huge, like a blanket. I would definitely keep your projects with beads smaller, because you are placing them on before you start the project, and you really, I think it can get a little cumbersome if they're for a blanket. But I think this could be cool to do for like a placemat or something as well, to have beads on like the edge or something. But again, you can either put them on individually without the needle, or use the needle and just kind of place them on. Really take time to think of how many you need on there to start the project with, and it's always better to have too many than not enough. So let's go ahead and get started on the project. To do this bracelet, or wristband, whichever you want to call it, you're going to set your sock loom 2 or your all-in-one loom to be 18 pegs in the round. Now the reason you see a binder clip here is this part of my loom has gotten kind of loose, so I didn't want it to slide out past where I wanted it to be, because as you can see, even with me tightening it up, there's some movement that I don't want to have happen. So the binder's just for me helping to keep it in place of how far out I'm okay with it going while I'm working. Now I've already done an E-wrap cast on, just because I figure it's the simplest cast on to do, but you can also change it up if you want with a pearl cast on or the figure 8 cast on, basically whatever your choice is. Now for this project, as you saw in the video before this, the little blurb, you have to put the beads on before. So I've got all my beads lined up over here in the pattern way that my daughter wanted it. I end up using 56 beads, and again, you have to place the beads on the yarn before you start. So as you saw in the little video just before this, with the pink yarn, I was showing you how you can easily do that. Now keep in mind, you need to think again, about what beads you want in what order. My daughter picked a combo. Let's see if I can show you real quick. She wants it to be where, there are, it's a little hard to see in this color, but she wanted 2 blue and 2 black in each row. So what I've already done is I picked where she wanted. She only wants like 4 beads each time we go around, and she wanted the black to be on one side, the blue to be on the other. So I'm only going to be placing beads 4 times in a round. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to make a little stretchy part at the beginning. So I'm going to do the rib stitch. I'm just going to do it for 4 rows, and all the rib stitches for this one, you can do a rib stitch that's double, where it's like 2 and 2 or 1 and 1, however you want to do it. But we're just going to do a simple one where we knit a peg and then we purl a peg, and this is going to be our rib stitch. So again, if you're going to knit, I'm using the E-wrap knit because it's just the easiest. Again, you could try doing this with a flat knit or a U knit, but I usually prefer the E-wrap knit for beginners. So you're just going to knit over, and then you bring this over, and then you would purl it. And you would continue doing this around the loom until you finished your rib stitch. And this is just going to give the end of the project on each end, because we're going to do this again at the end, just a little stretch at the beginning to make it a little easier for it to go on her wrist. Now what I want to say too is that her wrist measured 6 inches around. So that means, let me see, knit, purl. Okay, I do knit. Sometimes I lose track. But her wrist measured 6 inches around. I used a flexible ruler not ruler, of tape measure. And I measured her wrist and it came out to 6 inches. And so I did a little math to figure out, let me change the angle here. Did some math here to figure out how many pegs I would need to cast on. And for her, it seems like I would need to cast on, about 18 pegs in the round. So it's important that you measure your wrist and kind of plan accordingly to that, and kind of do some swatches to get the idea of what's going to work around for you. So I would say this wristband is good for kids that have about a 6-inch, around diameter of a wrist, possibly up to maybe a 7-inch. My wrist is about 7 inches, so I will try this on mine as well. So I would say this is good for using for maybe a 5 inches to 7 inches probably wrist. But we're going to go ahead and I'm going to keep doing this around until I get 4 rows completed this way. Again, alternating between knit and purl. 1 peg knit, 1 peg purl. Then come back and we'll move on to the part where we use the beads. So for this now, we're going to start using the beads. And as you can tell, like I said, my daughter picked the spots that she wanted the beads to be placed on. So there's only going to be 4 beads being placed on during each row. And she decided, she wanted me to have a little different texture if I could. She said where some parts were flat, some parts were not. So what I'm deciding to do is the pegs that are along this side, the 4 pegs you have on each side this way, we're going to purl those. And when we hit these pegs, we're going to knit those. And we're also going to be dropping the beads as we go. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to purl this side. I wanted to keep this very simple for beginners, but if you're more advanced, you can definitely just take this idea and go with it. Now when you go to the side, because I know it's going to be a little easier to do the knitting when you're using the beads, first thing you want to do is get your first bead kind of up and ready so you're not reaching for it too far. And as you can probably tell, I've got my yarn up high with me. If I had it on the floor, it would be more of a pain to bring these beads up. So that's just a little tip. Make sure your yarn isn't as far away from you, because these beads are going to weigh down the yarn, and it's going to make it harder if you normally have your yarn on the floor or on a table beside you. You want it closer to you. So because we're doing E-wrap knit, we're just going to simply E-wrap, knit over. Just making sure I got all the strands here. Sorry for going off camera. Okay, and then we're going to go to the next one. This one has the stitch marker, but first thing we're going to do is we're going to wrap it, knit it over. And now what I want to do is bring up the first bead and drop it down. Go the next peg. Again, we have a space in between, as you can see. Knit that over to lock it in place. Go the next one, you're going to knit that over. Now again, the beads aren't going to be exactly on the spot, but this just gets me to know the pattern. Now again, bring up your next bead. And go to the next peg and knit over to lock that bead where it needs to go. Now what I want you to do, we're moving on to the sides. We're going to move these out of our way a little bit. So you're going to kind of just push them down out of your way, and we're going to come to this side. And now all I want you to do is go ahead and purl this side, and I'll meet you back at this side. So I've already purled this side. Now it's a little hard to see because of the color choices my daughter did, but if you catch it in the light, you can see we got our 2 beads there in our spot that we want. And now we're working on this side. Now I will say I'm going to have to hold this a little differently than normal just because of the length of it, so just bear with me. So again, we're going to wrap this one. It's a little hard to show, but we're going to wrap it, E-wrap it, and knit over. We're going to get ready with our next bead, which for my daughter is a blue. So we're not going to drop it yet. We're going to knit the one first, then take your bead and drop it down. Go to the next peg and knit over. Okay, knit over the next. Grab your bead. And drop it. Now the loom is hitting against my tripod, so please bear with me. This is a little different angle I have to be in. So that's why I'm holding it slightly different. And then we're going to knit over to lock our bead in place. Go back to our front. And And again, remembering this side and that side we're purling, these sides we E-wrap knit. So we're just going to bring our yarn into the front, and we're going to purl. But this time we're going to go around following our purling, then our knitting, our purling, our knitting, without dropping any beads. We want a little bit of a space between when we do the beads. I just realized that it'd be better to put a little extra row in between. But follow your same purling on the end sides and, knitting on your outer sides here. So go ahead and we're going to purl this side. And again, like I said, we're not going to drop any beads this row. So just go around continuing our pattern where you're purling, like I said, on the shorter ends and E-wrapping it on the other, and I'll meet you back for the next row that we do with the beads. We're back to the row where we're going to be using the beads. Now, as you can see on the inside, we get this cool design. The beads may not line up exactly, and that's fine. It's okay. It gives it a little bit different design, so don't worry that your beads are not lining up even though you did it the same way. That's okay. That's part of the process and the pattern we're going to do. It does not have to be lined up. We'll see how it all looks when it's off the loom, and it's okay, like I said, if they're adjacent. But it's a little tricky to see, but like I said, my daughter wanted blue and black, and like I said, I think she'll be very happy with the way it's coming out. So this time we're going to do the same thing we did of where we're going to be dropping the beads. So you're going to do the purling on the sides, and what's great is you can really alternate this pattern. I wouldn't recommend putting a lot of beads in there because it might just make it a little too bunched up, but you can try it. Go ahead, and if you can find any kind of beads that you can thread through the yarn or put on the yarn, should work pretty well, so you might be able to find some really cool ones. The idea is just keep an eye on how many. You don't want them too bunched up together on this type of loom. It's different than the Nifty Knitter looms and that, so you might not want to use beads on every peg, but you can definitely alternate this pattern to include more beads if you wanted. So we get to the side with the bead, we're making sure our pegs are the side where we're going to be dropping the beads. We want to make sure our beads are kind of close and ready. So we're going to wrap. And knit over. Okay, and we're going to the next one. We wrap it. We knit over. Then we take our peg in the back, which is the black, and we go to the next peg and we wrap it and we lock that bead into place. Go to the next one. Wrap it. Make sure you get all your yarn. My yarn started to thread a little bit. Wrap it. Knit it over. Drop the peg, or the bead, sorry. Trouble focusing, but we can go right ahead to the next one and wrap it. And knit over. And again, when you get to the side ones, we're just going to go ahead and purl the side. And we're back to the outer side. So again, like I said, it's always tricky to show you this part because of the angle. Just kind of make sure I didn't mess up my things here. Okay, now we're going to go over here again, making your beads accessible as easy as you can. You wrap the first peg. I can do this without getting too out of focus here. Go to the next. You wrap it, knit over, and this time we need to drop a peg. This side is the blue ones that she picked. So the next peg, you wrap it, knit over. My goodness, this is fighting me. Wrap it, knit it over. going to drop the next peg that we need, or the next bead, sorry, and wrap the other peg. Can you tell that? Okay, hang on. Okay, so we wrap that last peg and knit over. And that puts us back to the beginning. As you can see, we've done more rows and we've got our beads. Like I said, this is the yarn that she picked out, so let's see if I can zoom in. You can see we got our blue beads on this side, our black on that side. And now we're going to do what we did before, and we're going to do our one row where we go ahead, and we purl the outer pegs, the 4 outer pegs, knit these 5 pegs, purl these 4, knit these 5. So go ahead and we're going to do that real quick and then come back here and I will explain what I want you to do next. Okay guys, now what I want you to do is continue what we've been doing. You're going to follow the pattern of purl 4, E-wrap 5, purl 4, E-wrap 5, and dropping the pegs just like we did when we did rows with dropping the beads, sorry. Not the pegs. I don't know why I keep messing that up. But again, I want you to complete this and think of it as a set of 2. The first set is where you're going to be dropping the beads like we did before. The second is you're going to be just doing the same knitting that we did before with the purling and that without dropping the beads. So I'm counting it as a set. How many times do you want to do this set of one row one way, one row one row with the beads, one row without, is up to you, but I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to work this until I get this just a little bit longer for my daughter. Again, I may not use all my beads, but I've got them on there just in case. So again, work it as a set where the row 1 is where you're purling, knitting, but dropping the beads where we did before. The second row in the set is to just purl, E-wrap knit, purl, E-wrap knit without any beads being dropped as we did before. So I hope I explained that well enough. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to work this, and when I come back, you obviously will be notified how many times I did this set. I'm not doing it as rows, I'm doing it as a set of 2 rows. So I'll let you know how many times I completed that. And then we'll be ready to do the rib stitch again and to cast it off. I completed 3 sets of doing those 2 rows. And what we got so far, as you can see, it's coming out from the bottom of the loom. I don't want to go too much further. I realize if I do more beads, I think it's going to be too wide, too long going down her arm. Now, if your daughter or child wants it to be longer, then great. You have the extra beads already on there. You can continue going. Just keep in mind, if you have this go up the arm more, you may need to increase the stitches so that it's not too tight, so that way it's tapered from the wrist up to the arm. So keep that in mind if you decide you want to go longer than the wrist, to remember that you may need to move your slider out and increase your stitches. And I do have a video on increasing stitches, so you can make sure to search up that, and that'll help you if you decide to move the slider out and make it wider. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the rib stitch we did, which was just knit 1, purl 1. And we're going to do the same amount of rows as we did in the beginning. Now I know what you're thinking, I don't see any of the beads. That's because when we're fully done, we're just going to push the beads from the inside out. So they may not show up now because they're all kind of being worked on the inside, but when we get all done, we'll simply be pushing them, and when they're worn, the skin will push them out to be seen. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the rib stitch again like we did here, of knit 1, purl 1, and you're going to continue that for 4 rows. So go ahead and you do your wrap of your E-wrap knit, and then the next peg is purl, and again you're going to continue this in the round for 4 rows before we take this off. So I'm going to continue this off screen, just like I said, just knit a row, or knit a peg, purl a peg, and continue working in the round for 4 rows, and then we'll come back and we'll take it off. After completing the 4 rows of the rib stitch where you knit 1 and purl 1, it's time to cast this off. We're going to do the crochet bind off. We're going to do the easier one that I usually show, and again what that is you would decide how many chains you want in between each peg as you work your way around in order to make it look kind of even. I think I'm going to be able to get away with at least 2 chains, just 2 chains in between. And what I'm going to do is, that means I'm going to rewrap this peg, knit that over, wrap it again, knit that over. Now I'm going to move it over, knit that over, wrap it again, knit over, wrap it one more time, knit over, and move it over. I may have just did 3, but it's not going to hurt anything. I would say between 2 and 3 chains in between. Knit that over, rewrap one more time, rewrap one more time again, and move it over to the next peg. So go ahead and continue this process till we meet back here at the last peg. We're on the last peg here. Now what I still want to do is do our 2 chains on that one before we take it off. So we're just going to rewrap it. Let me bring it over this way here. Rewrap it. Knit it over. Do one more wrap just like we did before with the other pegs. We did 2 before we moved it over. Again, I'm at a weird angle, so it's a little harder for me to do this on camera. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take it off the peg that it's on and place it on a crochet hook. Now bring that project gently through. Now go ahead and cut yourself a working tail. If you still have beads on, kind of move them out of your way. But just give yourself a working tail. Okay. Now when you're looking at the project, we've got this extra loop. We want to join it to the beginning one. We've got our 2 chains, so we're going to go into one of the beginning loops from the row, and then take the back loop over the top just to kind of lock it in place going around, and then I like to pull the yarn all the way through. And then I also like to give it a knot, but what I'm going to do this time a little different. And I'm going to bring my yarn back over through another loop on the other side, about halfway, and then take my yarn through it, the loop that I just created. Kind of like doing a knot, but just in a different location. You want it to be sturdy. If you're like me, you get obsessive and do at least 2 knots, just to make sure it's locked into place. Then you go ahead, cut your working tail a little bit, and you can weave in the ends on each side afterwards. Now like you're saying, this came off the loom, like, but I can't see the beads. Just go ahead and push them through, and you'll see them then. It's blue side, and there's our black side of the purling and the knitting. And because we did the knitting on the same side we did beads, it gives it a nice little textured look. So go ahead and weave in your stragglers, and I hope you think this is a cute video for a kid. Like I said,